Yo, 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 what's up, y'all? It's your boy Big Mike in the house, Swish for real in the building. I got my co-host with me, Boogie Bob. How you living, Boogie? How's things going on your end of the world, man?
I'm doing well. Summer's coming up, grass is growing, everything's green. NBA finals are going on, so it's all good. And I got my Swish for real.
Swish for real, baby. Yes, sir. And we hope to have Wild Dog on with us in a few, so we'll give him a little time and hop on when he can. Man, everything on my end has been pretty decent. I've been, as you know, I've been working on film, trying to get everything worked out. We just shot I just shot my first short film about 2 Fridays ago. It's called American Standoff. It's gonna be like maybe a 7 minute short, kind of depicting two gentlemen that are at odds with each other. It's a pretty decent film, I think, because I wrote it, but I won't know until we publish it and see what the universe thinks about it as far as people go. But
Yeah,
I'm
maybe this time next year you'll be at the Cannes Festival.
Man, if I can get that, that'd be dope. But it's a lot of those festivals you have to get in there like a year ahead of time, even just to be part of the festivities. So I don't know. It's gonna be
Hey,
tough.
and for all the Swish for real subscribers and listeners, Mikhail Mikhail Lampkin on IMDb, right there. That's the guy right there.
I appreciate it, Bob. Man, I keep grinding, man. I'm not gonna stop. And just gotta keep going, man. So as much as I could do to bring together my thoughts and put it in the visual, I'm happy with it. All right, man. Speaking of visuals, man, I had the pleasure of seeing kind of a documentary on the Dallas Mavericks 2011 run to the finals. And it was a nice documentary. It kind of gave you the ups and downs. Karan Butler getting hurt, and that Dirk came back. It was just a very up and down season. Rick Carlisle coached that team, and as we were speaking off camera, Rick Carlisle is currently coaching the Indiana Pacers, and they're in the finals right now. And as Bob mentioned, the finals is playing now as far as currently 2025. What were your thoughts on that run, man? They had to go through some tough teams in the West for sure. I can name off a few: Portland, OKC. What were you doing at that time, and what was your thought process, and how are you feeling as a fan when that train was going as far as the 2011 Dallas Mavericks is
Well,
concerned?
I'll give a couple tidbit facts that people may not know. Dirk actually sprained his knee at a game in Oklahoma City in December that year, and
Mm-hmm.
missed 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 some games. I think it was around the 12 games or so. So Caron Butler kind of filled the scoring in until Dirk could come back. And then Caron Butler got hurt right before the finals. So all of us that were disappointed in '06 were kind of like they were they were quote unquote called the one and done team because they had flamed out in the first round '07, '08, '09, 2010. And and that run in '06, it was kind of for a Mavs fan, it was the first time to go through the obviously a disappointing ending, but that was 62 days of a constant roller coaster of emotions with the win, emotions with the loss. When's my next game? Can I get seats, even though I split seats with others? So for 2006 and 2011, in the hall of my house, which you've seen, there's a frame of every ticket that I went to for those games. So proud to have been on both of those runs. But 2011, it it was one of those, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to push all my chips in. They've lost the last 4 or 5 years and disappoint me. It's like, and then, Portland, it was the first round opponent, Brandon Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge.
Yeah, he
For
was
those who don't
beast.
know, Brandon Roy was all star. Aldridge was all star. It's a pretty good Portland team. And the Mavs, I think, won 55, 57 games, one of those two. They were like third seed. Anyhow, they dropped a game they weren't supposed to, and Tyson and Chandler said, "No, it ain't happening this time." They had a lead, I think, in game 3 or 4, and Brandon Roy shot him back into the game and won.
Mm-hmm.
But when they went up to Portland, uh, Tyson Chandler said, "Pack one set of clothes, and we're all wearing black." He goes, "This ends tonight."
I remember that.
And they they proceeded to take care of business and took Portland. And it was kind of like, okay, I'll put a few of my chips in. I'll put a few. I'm not putting all in, but I'll put a few of my chips in. And then, as fate would have it, we faced the two-time, not one time, but two-time defending champion, hated LA Lakers
The Laker Nation.
with Kobe Bryant, Pau Gasol, and Lamar Odom, and I forget who the point guard was. And
Was it Farmer? George Farmer, I believe.
I think it was Derek Fisher. Uh,
Man,
and then Andrew, the
Bynum.
big tall Bynum, that was the center, big guy. And they Jason Kidd gets a steal in game 1. They wind up winning it by a small margin. We're like, okay, now we got home court. Then they win game 2. Well, I didn't. My friend, they selected game 3, so I had game 4 tickets. But the Mavericks called me and said, "Hey, would you want to be in between timeout in a dance contest for game 3?"
Nice.
And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll be there." So I was actually, I didn't have, I mean, it was a seat, but I really didn't have a seat, a regular type seat.
Mhm.
We were up in, I got to bring a friend. We were up in uh, the press box.
Oh,
So we're
nice.
Brad Davis and Cooperstein and the reporters. So we're at the top of the AAC. So they come and get me, and in between the timeout and the third quarter, I walk down in the lower deck in between the aisles, not in a seat. And I'd come up with this. This is me and this other guy in a dance off. I'd come up with a new dance move, which it was a cheer from way back in the 80s, which was Beat LA, but I made it into dance move, which was Beat LA. And so, it was about a 2-minute dance contest, and a Laker fan tried to get on camera, and I didn't know, unknowingly, I just kind of pushed him to the side. About halfway through, I'm like, I break out the Beat LA uh, dance move, and I'm yelling it, and the fans to both sides of me here, I kept yelling it and kept doing that move. The next thing you know, the whole crowd was erupting, Beat LA, and they were down by 7, 8, 9 points at that point. And by the time we got back up to the press box, they were ahead.
Dang.
And then at game 4, I was in my regular seats, and everybody knows about the Mother's Day massacre
Mm-hmm.
when Bynum got thrown out and World B. Peace got thrown out. They're like, "I don't want to be on the court. Let me get ejected." So, we not only beat the Lakers, we swept. We swept 4-0 the two-time defending LA Laker champions
With Kobe.
with Kobe. And so at this point, the Mavericks fans like, okay, I'm all in. I'm pushing all my chips in. and we faced a very young Oklahoma City team.
And mind you,
Very
they had
young.
Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Russell Westbrook. Not to mention, wasn't Perkins on that team? Well, Big Perk.
Perkins was on that team, and you're forgetting the other guy who defended Dirk. Serge Ibaka was on that team.
Yep, I was about to say his name.
So, and Harden was the sixth man. It was just his second year. He wasn't quite the same James Harden that we all know now. But you had three future most valuable players of the league on that team. And they had Nick Collins, who was a pretty good bench player, 6'10" as a guard. But
Yeah,
they won the first game and then lost game 2. And then I went up to Oklahoma City and stayed with my dad. And in game 3, Oklahoma City hit their first 8 shots.
Mm.
And the Mavericks hit like one or 2 shots. I mean, they were down. They were big time down. They didn't even get back really into the game until the last shot, which forced it to overtime. And Dirk took over and they won game 3. Then the ride was on, because game 4 was bye bye, and when they got back home on game 5, it was like night night, night night.
Hit him with Steph Curry.
And we're sitting there going, all right, took us 5 years, but we're going back. And then a day or 2 later, we find out, oh, great, we got to play Miami, and Dwayne Wade, LeBron, and Chris Bosh.
And they also had who was that guy on the?
Well, they had Haslam. Eric Denfier was a backup center.
Yeah.
They had Gary Payton was on the 06 team. They had Mario Chalmers. Yeah. Mario Chalmers was the other guard.
Ray Allen. Was Ray Allen on that squad too for Miami? Or did he already go to Boston?
I don't know if he was still on the team in 11 or not. So it was like the 3 All-Stars versus 1 All-Star. And game 4 or 5, Dirk got sick. And back then, thankfully they changed it, but back then it was 2 home games, then 3 road games, and then 2 home games. So the Mavericks had 3, unlike 06, it was reversed. They had 3 games. Game 3, 4, and 5 were in Dallas. And Miami won the first one, and so it was kind of game 4 was like, you got to win or go home. But the one game that stuck out in my mind was game 2. So they were down 15 points in the fourth quarter. And had been turning the ball over uncharacteristically.
Carlisle. Well, now they're in Miami, right? And then that's
Miami.
Yeah.
And Dirk hits the go ahead.
When they layup?
Well, he hit a go ahead 3 that they tied the game up. Then he hits a 3-pointer. And Jason Terry double teams LeBron, not Dwayne Wade, and LeBron throws across the court past Mario Chalmers, who buries a 3 from the corner.
Yep.
And so then the Mavs call timeout, and they get the infamous left-handed layup from Dirk.
Yeah. He got by Chris Bosh on that play, if I remember correctly.
Chris Bosh and Haslam was coming over too, so he was double teamed. So last night, Oklahoma City had a 15-point lead with about 6 minutes to go in the game.
Mind you, the same coach who's coaching Indiana coached that 2011
same
team.
Coach.
Yeah.
And so Carlisle's been there before, and I was reading in this morning's paper, the Pacers have had a last-minute shot by Tyrese Halliburton in every round this playoff. In the first round, second round, Eastern Conference Finals, and now the finals.
The kid has surprised me as far as Tyrese Halliburton goes. I didn't think he was going to be this I
He
guess
wasn't having the
Phillips.
best game, but
Yeah, he's having a really good season. Um,
but
my-
that 2011 team, Peja came off the bench.
yep,
Jason Terry came off the bench. Deshaun Stevenson had been put in as a starter with Jason Kidd, a 38-year-old Jason Kidd. Sean Marion, who was in his 30s. Dirk, who just was in his 30s. Tyson Chandler, who was in his 30s. Your backup center, Brendan Haywood. I mean, Brian Cardinal. I mean, that that team had a lot of we never won a ring and we're hungry.
yeah.
And so that it was a very emotionally draining but fun ride. Something you'll remember for a long time. So
What was also interesting about that was that that was the time that LeBron made the decision to go to Miami to build that big three with him, Wade, and Bosh.
yeah, to take his talents,
Yeah.
take his talent. I'm taking my talents to South Beach. And in the first press conference, he goes, "Not one, not two, not three, not four, not five."
Hmm. It was interesting that they did that. I know he wanted to clean up his image from that since he moved to the Lakers. Well, he went from Miami to Cleveland and to Cleveland to the Lakers, but he wanted to clean him up his image because at that time he was viewed as a villain.
Yeah, and I think there are some people that probably still view him as a villain. Most Maverick fans would say they hate Dwayne Wade more than they hate LeBron.
I get it because Dwayne Wade put a thorn in our sides 2006, and I'm going to say thanks to the refs because the officiating in that game was horrible. But I digress because it's over with. We at
Well,
least got there.
he averaged almost 40 points a game,
Yeah, which is crazy. I mean,
and he
I think.
wasn't known as a shooter.
Yep. Anything else you want to add to the 2011
Well, they're
conversation?
just, so we talked about the players. I'll just recap. Brandon Roy, LaMarcus Aldridge, Kobe in his prime, Gasol, Odom, Katie, Russ, Harden, Ibaka, Wade, Bosh, LeBron. That's how many players Dirk had to carry the team through.
But at the time, didn't Brandon Roy have some knee issues? Because
He'd
he
had
did.
surgery the year before, but I think that year he had made the All-Star team. I mean,
Yeah,
he had set out one of the games in the playoffs, but he was still a danger.
yeah, he was a hooper. I wonder what his career would have been if he was fairly healthy. Kind of reminds me of what would have happened if Derrick Rose would have stayed in Chicago healthy. He would have
I
been like
I I
Michael
think
Jordan.
I thought that's where you'd be going because a very similar player, very similar injury, very similar career trajectory.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So speaking of the Chicago Bulls, they had a nice run back in the 90s and they faced off against some really tough teams as well. And they had Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen was the two catalysts of the 90s when it comes to the championships. I was fairly young. I'm pretty sure you were pretty young at the time when in the 90s when the Bulls were dominating. What
I
were your
wasn't
thoughts
that young.
what are your
I
thoughts,
I
man?
was already in my 30s by the time they won their first one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean Jordan was actually playing. I graduated college and Jordan was still a junior
Mm.
in college for UNC. So you talk about heyday college basketball and also the beginning of the heyday for the NBA. So and I actually got to see in Chicago in '96. I got to see that team that won 72 games. I still have the program from this day. Tony
Oh,
Kukoc was a rookie on that team.
and the closest team currently I can see that was similar to Chicago offensively, basically, is the Golden State Warriors. They reminded me of the Chicago Bulls a lot because you can kind of mirror a lot of those people. You can put kind of you can look at Steph Curry and Michael Jordan almost as a mirror image, but as far as scoring wise, but defensively, I don't think Steph Curry can hold a candle to Michael Jordan. And then you can look at Draymond Green. He was the Dennis Rodman of the Bulls for Golden State go. But that's the comparisons I could see as far as they go.
Yeah, I mean those Bulls teams. They had Bill Cartwright, and then later Luke Longley, and a guy the Mavs drafted, Bill Winnington. I mean, they their centers were serviceable centers, as you would say, but they weren't. They weren't going to light it up, and they were basically there to make sure anybody that got in the paint got knocked on their butt.
Yep, because that was
And
back during the Detroit Bad Boys times.
yeah, back when they had Mahorn and Bill Lambier.
Mm-hmm.
So they had some beefy guys, but Luke Longley could score, but and he could defend a little. I mean, it was the MJ and Scottie Pippen show. And the first three Pete had Horace Grant, Harvey Grant, that went to OU, his twin brother.
Because in
Jeremy
'91,
Grant, Jeremy Grant, that plays for Portland now, is Harvey's son.
son, yeah, he's not bad though. So in 1991, they had to play the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm pretty sure you're going to talk about that, but they beat the Lakers in 5 games. That's their first championship in 1991 for the Bulls.
Magic Johnson, L.A. Lakers. This was the year before. This was the year before he was discovered having AIDS. So you're
Mm.
talking the Magic Johnson, and James Worthy was still there, and Sam Perkins was there.
Yeah, they had a squad. I mean, how can
Uh,
you get past that tough of a team, the Lakers? But back then, New York Knicks was tough as far as the East goes.
with
Um,
Patrick Ewing,
yeah, and then you had
the
Charlotte was pretty
Pacers,
tough. And yeah, Pacers. You're right. The Pacers and who else? Oh,
Cleveland with Mark Price and Brad Daugherty,
the Nets were not bad either.
the Nets with Kenyon Martin.
No, the Kenyon Martin wasn't there at that time. That was in the 2000s when they had Kenyon
Oh, that
Martin.
was
Yeah,
Robinson, the number one pick, wasn't it? Robinson was on that team.
Glenn Robinson. That was for Milwaukee.
Yeah, not Glenn. It was another Robinson, but yeah, the Nets were pretty loaded. Was
Yeah,
Stephon Marbury on that team?
he was on the Minnesota team back in the '90s, and him and Kevin Garnett. I think that was back in '95.
So if you're a Mavs fan in 91, 92, you went to a game to see Jordan, or you went to see whoever else was playing on the other team, because that was the low period of the Mavericks when they won 15 games, 20 games, 18 games, and
And
Dick
I,
Martin came
I,
back and they won 30.
I still love the Mavs back then. I didn't care. I mean, the Bulls
Well,
was
this was the 91 was before any of the three J's showed up.
yeah. The Bulls were one of the teams that was kind of global, where people knew Michael Jordan, knew what the Bulls was going to do, and the fact, and we did a story on Jordan's dad that he passed away back in the 1993 season, right before Jordan retired. So he stayed retired from '94. He came back in '95, and then they went back and won the championship in '96. So he kind of missed 2 years in between there to winning the championship. So if that tragedy wouldn't have never happened, I would think they would have been winning at least 8 straight championships. What are your thoughts?
Well, there's always been rumors that he went to go play baseball those 2 years. I actually came back and played in the playoffs and wore like number 45 or something, I think it
Mhm.
was. Uh, but there was always conspiracy theory and rumors that that was his probation from the previous commissioner, David Stern, for gambling. Uh,
Oh, dang.
and in the COVID years, they had that 10 series, that series with Michael Jordan, and there was a lot of stuff that came out.
Mhm.
But just today, for those that are listening to this podcast on Facebook, there's under the reels, it talks about Jordan loses 50 million investments in restaurant over the last few years, and he's also given 50 million away to healthcare for those that can't afford it, and education, and over 2,000 shoes a year he donates, because his royalties from Nike are 100 million a year.
Jeez.
So he gives it back to the community and to the schools and to those in need. And
Yeah,
he was part owner of the Charlotte Hornets that we've talked about a lot.
facts.
His original investment was 170, 100 and some odd million. When he
Yeah.
sold, he got his portion of the ownership was 1.7 billion.
Dang. So he made a nice,
But yeah,
lofty
so the
amount of money.
100 million he gets from Nike basically goes out to supporting restaurants, schools, and healthcare.
Yeah. Most popular shoe ever, in my opinion, is Jordan brand. Is one of the ones that people, it's iconic. How can you not know Jordan shoes? Even though I'm not I don't wear a lot of Jordans, but my wife, she's a fan of Jordan shoes and all that stuff. So she always tries.
Wasn't it also the first shoe to cost more than $100?
Oh, that would be a good question. I don't know. I
I,
couldn't even
I
tell
I
you.
think it was the one that broke the $100 barrier. AI was close, but
Dang.
the notes I wrote down at six rings in 8 years,
Mm-hmm.
a perfect 6 for 6 in the finals, two three-peats, not one but two three-peats.
Two.
Phil Jackson was the coach. I'm gonna mention that a little later.
Yep.
These are the teams that they beat in the two three-peats. We talked about the 91 Lakers. They beat the 92 Trailblazers.
Mm.
Can you think of anybody on the 92 Trailblazers?
Clyde
I know you
Drexler, of
were young,
course.
Pop.
Clyde Drexler, Duckworth, Robinson. Um, who else was
Terry
on?
Porter.
Terry Porter. That's right, because Terry Porter
Yeah,
was him and Clyde Drexler was a handle, man.
yeah. And then in 93, they beat the Suns. You
And
know
that's
who
what
was on the 93 Suns team? And he
I
won
know.
the MVP, I think, that year.
Kevin Johnson was on there.
Kevin Johnson
Charles
was.
was it Charles Barkley on there as well?
Charles Barkley.
And who else is on that squad? Kevin Johnson, Charles Barkley, Dan Marley, um, and the center. I forgot his name. He does NASCAR now. Doherty, was it Doherty? Brad Doherty,
Yeah, and I think they also had Mark Bryant on their team.
Mark Bryant. Yeah.
The Thunder Dan. Yeah.
Thunder Dan. And it was crazy though, when I used to be an artist, when I used to do sketches, I had sketched a picture of Jordan being defended by Dan Marley, because Jordan leaned back with the ball like this, and Dan Marley had his elbows in his back, and Jordan's looking over his shoulder. I still have that picture, man. I think I'm a probably frame it, man. I need to put that somewhere. I have so many pictures I have. I need to start putting them in frames, but
Yeah.
that's
And
why I
I mean,
remember.
I think I gave you a Chris Webber one. I have from 91 to 95, I collected basketball cards. So I got a book full of Michael Jordan playing cards. Next time you come over, I have to give you a few. So
Absolutely.
94, 95, Hakeem Olajuwon, they win. So their second three-peat, these are the three teams they played. Let's see if you can name any of the players. 96, they played the Seattle Supersonics.
That's Gary Payton's squad, him and Sean Kemp.
Yes, 64 wins.
That was a ridiculously good team. It's surprised. I don't know how many games did they go, 6 or 7?
I was trying to pull that up. The source I use, it didn't have. Uh, I'd have to go back to the player to see what the series was.
Gotcha.
Then in '97 and '98, they played the same team twice, and that's one of the ESPN highlight reels. But they played the Utah
Utah
Jazz.
Jazz. I was about to say it had to be Utah. Karl Malone, John Stockton, Jeff Hornacek. Uh, what's the other guy that center they
Byron
had?
Scott.
Byron
Byron
Scott. Yeah.
Scott. That quintessential. It ain't a push. As his arm goes like that, Byron Scott
Oh
goes over
yeah,
there, and then he comes
had
like
a
this,
crossover.
and then he jumps in the air. He jumps in the air, celebrating, going, "Roar, roar."
Yeah, that's crazy. And what's crazy about a lot of the games that Jordan were in, as far as playoffs, finals for sure. There's one particular game where he had the flu, and the shoes that he was wearing in that game has now become the infamous flu game Jordans. I don't know what series it is. I think it's Jordan 3s or Jordan 4s. They call them the flu game Jordans. I'm like, what? Maybe it's Jordan 10s. I'm like, I can't remember.
Yeah, going
Anyways,
back to earlier 2011 when Dwayne Wade and LeBron went,
oh,
you
to
know,
Dirk, yeah,
yeah, because Dirk
that
was
was
sick. He
flu
had been
game,
running 105-degree fever earlier in the day.
and that karma caught up with them. Let's see, flu game
Yeah, the
Jordan.
flu game, didn't he score like 48, 45, 46, 48 points in that game?
Probably so. I know he had like 45, I think so. Because so it's called the Jordan 12s. I have those exact ones, and mine are so beat up. I don't even want to show the crowd, but I had those
What
Jordan.
color were they? Were
They
they
were,
the red, white, and black?
no, they were black with red undertones.
Black with a red undertone.
Yep,
The classic one I like of the Jordan brand was the white one with the black and red stripes going through it.
I'll show you what they look like. Show the audience.
So I looked up, I didn't look how many games it was in the series.
See it? Those are the flu
Yeah,
games.
I can see that.
Yeah,
Uh, they averaged 64 wins over those 6 seasons. So
and then
they
they
won
averaged.
67, 69, and 72.
I was gonna say
And
72, and then Golden State Warriors break that, and then they won 73 games.
they won 73, but they lost in the finals and they were up 3-1. So you can't
That was
call it
against
the greatest
Cleveland.
team ever if you don't win the chip.
Yeah,
They might have the greatest record, regular season record. It's kind of like the 18-0 New England Patriots, but lost to the Giants in the Super Bowl.
and I kind of like this segment, man, because we definitely talking about some good stuff in regards to championships. But I'll let you continue.
Well, in 91, you're talking about that's the year after Detroit had won 2 in a row with the bad boys. And the Lakers and San Antonio and Houston were still pretty formidable teams in the West. And then in the second three-peat, you know, Sean Kemp and Gary Payton and then the Utah Jazz. I mean, you're not talking they they were it wasn't like they were beating, the bottom of the barrel team. These were like either the number one or number two seed in the West.
Hmm. The fact that they got to where they are as far as two three-peats is amazing. I don't know how they would fare. I think they would be either one of the top. They would again. It would make me believe that they would be the Golden State of today's time because you had shooters, you had a great guard in Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen defensively, and you have uh, Dennis Rodman. So they would definitely be favored every year to win a championship if they play in this current time. You think so?
Yeah, even in 2011, Mavericks didn't take a lot of 3-point shots back then.
Yeah.
Uh, Dirk, on the stats that came out in that finals, he averaged like 25 points and 10 rebounds in the finals. He did not take, he took one, but he did not make a 3-point shot, and yet he averaged 25 points.
Yeah, Dirk
You know
was
how hard that
good.
is to do in the finals without hitting threes?
Nowadays it's tough.
It's tough now, even with threes, but all twos and free throws, like you got to be getting to the line quite a bit.
No, facts. Facts. And last question on this for you. What were your thoughts of the nostalgia of the Bulls during that time?
Well, I will use a term because it was on TV every weekend, even if you weren't a Bulls fan. But on the infamous Saturday Night Live, they always had a segment of guys drinking beer, and it's the Bulls,
Oh,
the
Bulls.
Bears,
Yeah, I remember that.
and they would say, "What'd you get with Mike Ditka and Michael Jordan?" The Jortka.
The Bulls. I remember that. I didn't watch Saturday Night Live a lot, but I've always seen their commercials with those guys saying the Bulls, which
The
is crazy.
Bulls,
Yeah,
the Bears.
right. So moving on, man. Our next topic, as far as NBA teams that made the finals, the Lakers, man, 2000 Lakers with Kobe and Shaq was something fierce to see. The Shaq and Kobe duo, and they had Paul Gasol at the time when they traded for him. Did they have Paul Gasol then?
Not in a 2000 championship, the
No,
2009
no,
and
yeah,
10.
you're correct.
Yeah,
So they
he was
they only
still in
had
Memphis.
Shaq. Yeah, they had Shaq,
Yeah, they had
Fisher.
his brother. They had his brother Marc Gasol, but
Gotcha.
he wasn't on that championship team either.
So when they won the championship, Shaq and Kobe, they won what, three together?
Uh, yeah, that and common denominator with the team we just talked about,
Hmm.
Phil Jackson,
Yeah, because they
and
won in 2000,
Derek Fisher, and Byron
2001, and
Scott
2002.
were your 2 primary point guards on that team.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so they won in 2000, 2001, and 2002. So they did a three-peat. And in 2002, they swept the team that they faced off with that at that time.
And you have to remember in the Lakers three-peat of 2001 and 2, San Antonio Spurs had Robinson and Duncan for 2 of those.
Mm,
So, they Duncan Robinson won in '99. They didn't win again until 2003. So
yeah,
you talk about Mario Elie was on that team, Sean Elliott, Danny Manning was on one of them. Uh, Parker and Ginobili came a little later, but Avery Johnson was on the '99 team. So it wasn't like the Lakers had an easy road to get to the finals.
yeah. And because the Houston at the time, then they have Yao Ming.
Uh, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I mean, I know Tracy McGrady was there.
Yeah, because I know Shaq. Well, I love facing off against Yao Ming.
Well, and Dwight Howard was in Orlando,
Yeah,
so
they were in the East Coast.
but there was no that 2000, 2001, 2002. There wasn't nobody in the NBA that could guard Shaq.
Yeah, because when Dwight Howard came in, it was kind of on the kind of a midpoint of Shaq's career, and
Yeah,
he was being compared to Shaq, which was not a bad comparison. The only difference is that Shaq was a little bit more aggressive with his
he's
offensive
more
game.
aggressive. He had more than one move. Dwight Howard only had a couple moves. He was limited offensively. But Shaq had a lot more to his game.
Yeah,
You were on the tail end of Patrick Ewing in the East. You know,
and he got a lot of training as far as Shaq goes. Well, I wouldn't say training, but he said he kind of mimicked a lot of what Hakeem Olajuwon had did doing Houston. And a lot of the centers really actually trained with Kim Olajuwon nowadays. If nobody have never known that.
Yeah, footwork.
Thanks.
Always told the boys I coach, it don't matter how tall you are. If you can't get your feet there, it don't matter what height you are.
Thanks.
And it's like a shorter guy that with good footwork over a taller, slower guy. I'll take the guy with footwork.
Now, you think they would have won 4 in a row if Kobe and Shaq wouldn't have been feuding as they were?
Uh, it's kind of like asking would the Cowboys won 3 in a row if Jimmy Johnson stayed there.
Of course they
Uh,
would have.
the, the same things that propel them to 3 championships are the same things that tear them apart. And unlike today, when it's finances, when you can't afford to pay those kind of people, I mean, there was a salary cap back then, but there wasn't the penalties that you have now. And Jerry Buss was still alive. Uh, but the turmoil between not just Shaq and Kobe, but even Phil Jackson and the assistant coaches, it gets to where the locker room is no longer cohesive in the chemistry. And it doesn't matter how good the player is at some point when the chemistry is destructive instead of constructive, you got to do something. And they got Lamar Odom and Grant was his last name in that trade that where Shaq goes to Miami.
Yeah. And
And
let's think about Phil Jackson at the time. Do you think if they didn't have Phil Jackson, they would have won any championship? Because I believe for him, who was the coach? Wasn't it
maybe one because they had fired. I don't remember who the previous coach,
I
but
think
they'd
it was
gone
Byron
through a
Scott,
couple
wasn't it?
coaches.
Wasn't it Byron Scott?
Byron Scott was later.
Uh, Really? Who was before him?
Was he before him? Because I thought he was still playing. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
don't
know he
know.
coached in Oklahoma City for a while.
Let's see. I'm gonna Google it real quick.
You have to go look on your source. I don't. I just remember they'd gone through a couple coaches before Phil Jackson. And in fact, if I remember right, in 2004 or five, one of those years, Phil Jackson left, and they brought him back to coach the '09 and 2010 team that won championships. So there's a break between the three-peat and the two-peat for the Lakers.
Yeah, it says here that the 1999 season, it was coached by first Dale Harris, and then in the middle of the season they fired him, and then they hired what we said earlier, Byron Scott. So he kind of was coaching them before Phil Jackson got there. So not quite sure.
Yeah.
And then Byron Scott go to Charlotte after that, if I'm not mistaken.
Uh, Maybe the Nets. I mean, he's coached for 2 or 3 places and been assistant coach. Like I said, he was the head coach for New Orleans when
Yeah,
they
yeah,
played in Oklahoma City, and then later on, when Seattle moved to Oklahoma City, he was the coach for the Oklahoma City Thunder for a while, till Scotty
yeah.
Brooks. So I remember Dell Harris being. I mean, Dell Harris took the Rockets to pretty far. I think he took them to the finals once, but and Dell Harris is known with the Mavericks under
Yeah,
Nelly and the G
yeah,
League.
yeah. And Nelly and Hidell were pretty tight for a long time. Now, as far as the when Kobe left, I mean when Shaq left Kobe, and then we're still talking about 2000s. How many championships do you think he would have won? Because Kobe won 2, and Shaq was really trying to outdo Kobe at the time. But Kobe won 2, and then 2011 they faced off against Dallas. That kind of whimpered his plans. But that Lakers team, Kobe being the leader of it at the time, could they have been competitive with Shaq if Shaq would have never left, or maybe Shaq would have came back? Or what are your thoughts if they would have got?
They asked Shaq about that, uh, and he often refers to the fact that if him and Penny Hardaway hadn't split or Penny Hardaway hadn't got hurt, that he thinks that when he was in Orlando, he could have won 3 or 4 championships with Penny. So when
Mm.
they asked Shaq about whether he would have won 4 or 5 with Kobe, he defers to his time with Penny Hardaway.
Uh, smart move. Smart move. Any
That
other
that
thoughts?
that says a lot when you ask him directly, and he dodges the question by talking about Penny Hardaway. So, I, it's been several years. It's been 2 decades since they broke up. I think Shaq has a lot of respect for Kobe,
Mhm.
but he nicknamed Dick Dwayne Wade Flash Gordon.
Oh
You know,
wow.
so when he got to Miami, that was still a pretty formidable Shaq. You know,
Yeah, because the 2009 and 2010 Lakers, 2009 when they went to the championship and won it, they faced off against Orlando Magic and they beat them 4-1. And then the
yeah,
following year,
that was with Hito Turkoglu as their point guard because Jameer Nelson got hurt. And
yeah,
that the other thing about that Orlando team that had Dwight Howard
yep,
was they beat LeBron. That was LeBron, and LeBron. They had 3 wings. They could handle the ball and shoot the three, and LeBron couldn't guard all of them at once, and that's how they beat that Cleveland LeBron team.
facts. And then 2009, they went on to face off in 2010 the Celtics and they beat the Celtics in 6 games. That was a tough series. I remember that series.
Yeah, Paul Pierce and KG and them had won it in '08.
Yep. Because the Lakers faced off against them then and lost in six
Yeah,
games, so they returned the favor. So the Lakers been pretty tough in the 2000s, man, especially in the early to mid 2000s, all the way to 2010. So they've had some runs, especially Shaq and Kobe, and then Kobe with Paul Gasol. It's an amazing run that the Lakers had in the
yeah,
2000s.
and then nobody talks about Kobe being the GOAT. They want to talk about LeBron being the GOAT, but I always thought Kobe was the closest to Michael Jordan's game. LeBron was more like Magic.
Facts,
So
and I agree with that.
Kobe has 5 rings. Magic, I think, Magic had 4 or 5. There's not many players that have had 5 or more rings.
Nah, facts. Speaking, still keeping on the topic of the finals, we are looking at now the 2025 finals with the Pacers versus the OKC Thunder. And it's been game one has been a thriller of a game. If you guys haven't seen the game highlights, I'm pretty sure you have by now if you're looking at this because this is recorded on a Friday night. The Pacers knocked off the take game one at the last second with zero point 0.3 seconds left with Tyrese Halliburton hitting the game winner and just crushing the spirits of the Oklahoma OKC fans. And me, I already mentioned it before. I'm rooting for Indiana simply because I'm a fan of Rick Carlisle. Rick Carlisle, as I stated before, I copied his coaching style when I coached Little League and high school basketball. I didn't coach for a high school team, but I coached high school players. So I use his tactics, and we won a lot of games with that. As far as what we're seeing now, Bob, with this series, and we haven't got to game two yet. What are your thoughts on it, and who you got winning this? Because it's man, everybody's picking OKC, but I beg to differ.
Well, I'm in one of these positions that I win no matter which team. I grew up in Oklahoma City, so until last night, I've been rooting for the Thunder. But after watching that game, like Carlisle brought the Maverick fans a ring. So, like, whether Indiana wins, it's Carlisle, being a fan of Carlisle like yourself. Do you remember what I texted you last night before the game even started?
Avery Johnson, I believe.
I
Was it?
mentioned Avery Johnson, the 64 win Maverick team the year
And the
after
change of
'06.
the line, change of
He
the lineup.
changed the lineup in game one.
Yep.
And in the pregame they said, well, they're going to start Casey Wallace, and I texted you immediately. I said, mistake. Avery Johnson lost that series and the momentum. Like they had won 64 games, and that Golden State team had a bunch of 6'6" guys that could shoot it. Jason Richardson, Baron Davis. I think Monte Ellis was even on that team.
But
But
to mention the Dallas Mavericks,
you have a formula that have won 80 games this year, and you're going to change it. The most important momentum game of the year that sets the tone is game one.
right?
And
I
when
was
you
going to
make
say when you mentioned Dallas Mavericks, then in 2006 they won the first two games on the lineup change.
no, no, Golden State beat them in game one, and they were behind the eight ball the whole time.
Oh, are you talking about the Golden State Warriors game? I'm talking.
Yeah,
I'm
the
thinking.
Golden State Warriors the year after the
Yeah,
finals,
yeah, yeah. I got you.
when
Got
as an 8 seed Warriors beat the number 1 seed Mavs that won 64 games.
you. Right. You're absolutely correct on that.
And
That
and
was,
and Avery decided like, okay, you won 64 games with this lineup. Now I know Eric Dampier gets his, but you won 64 games with this lineup, and they lost the first 4 that year. So, and they lost the last 2 because they didn't play their starters. So 6 of their losses were really not, uh, but you take a 64 win team against a 41 and 41 team, and the first thing you do in game one is you're going to change your lineup. Like, well, I was sitting there in warm up, and they had announced the starting lineup before the game started, and I was sitting there watching warm up. I'm like, one, you could see in warm up they were pressing too hard. The adrenaline was off the charts high. It's like they were trying to win the championship in the first game and prove everybody wrong. And they were so hyped up. And then when they announced the starting lineup, I'm like, we already lost. The guy looked at me and goes, you're crazy. I said, look, I've watched a lot of basketball in my years. I said, when you change your lineup to match a team that won 20 games less, 23 games less than you did, I said, Nellie's already in Avery Johnson's head.
mm-hmm.
Like, they already gave the momentum and the whatever advantage they had, they gave it away. Of
Yep.
course, Nellie forced Dirk in that series to shoot quick. So there's a difference in a quick shot to me and somebody who shoots quickly. And
Mm-hmm.
if you shoot quickly and you change your rhythm, Dirk very much a rhythm shooter, they forced him to shoot quick. And he missed a lot more shots than he normally would miss.
Yeah, because they
Uh,
doubled him a lot that game, and they put a lot of smaller people on him to be pesky.
yeah. And he developed after that because he just turned and shoot over him, but he didn't rush his shot. He didn't rush his shot, very methodical shot, but he didn't rush it after that. But when they said, and Casey Wallace, I saw him play against Trey Johnson and at Lake Highlands versus Richardson. So I mean, he's a really good player, and actually Oklahoma City swapped picks with Dallas in that draft that brought him Derek Lively so they could get Casey Wallace.
Mm.
So I mean, he's a capable player, and him and Crusoe are both good defenders. But you win 68 games, and he had started because of injury a few games. If you're going to make a move like that, do it in game 2 or game 3. When you do it in game 1, you're already conceding that what's been working that won us 68 games is not valid for this series.
So let me
I,
ask you this
and I
question:
and I texted you this and said Carlisle is in Dagnall's head already.
I was going to ask you if Dagnall loses this final, will they be moving on from him next year?
Uh, I'd like to see the Thunder win, but Carlisle, you're betting against Carlisle, and like Dagnall's a very good coach, and he's had some good training under, but it's his first one, and much like Pat Riley schooled Avery Johnson in 06, I think Carlisle's going to school Dagnall.
Yeah. Stop putting that dagger in my heart for 06.
But I mean, and the reason I bring this up is because the viewers don't know we text back and forth, but I texted you before that game even started, and they were leading. And what I want to say about the game last night is Topin was he hit 6 3-pointers. I'm not sure how many.
Obi Toppin, right?
Obi Toppin.
Yeah. Now he
And
was nice.
they had over 20 turnovers, but they shot hadn't looked at the stats, but at the end of the game, they were talking about they were close to 50% from 3-point range.
And Toppin, he came from the New York Knicks, right?
Yeah. And Pascal Siakam, who I loved when he was on Toronto, that was rumored to be a Mavs trade target instead of PJ Washington. But they didn't want to give up 2 first-round picks. And Miles Turner, a local guy from Euless Trinity, shout out to Miles Turner.
And he's always saying, not always, but he mentioned in the past he would love to be a Maverick.
Yeah, he's a thorn in the Maverick side.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they had no answer for Nembhard or Naismith last night.
Man, Nembhard just went off. He was shooting like crazy, like he was born to do this.
He was double teamed, fading away, almost out of bounds, hit a 3-pointer, nothing but net. I'm like, yeah, they're coming back. I mean, they only led the game. The total time that they led the game was 0.3 seconds.
3 seconds. Which is crazy. And you would never think that Tyrese Halliburton will pull up from that point inside the 3-pointer and hit a dagger to send that game into the win column for them.
Yeah, I was watching the replay to see if they just failed to cover him or if they weren't double teaming him. They were looking for the swing pass, but the defender was there, and Halliburton drove off the 3-point line and forced the defender back a step, and that's when he pulled up. It wasn't a step back, but he forced the defender to take that step back and gave him just enough space to jump up and elevate. It's like a 21-foot jump shot.
Yeah. I've done a shot like that before in a game. I was like, it was a street ball game, but I'm like, that was a really nice shot.
And yet Jalen Brunson was the one that won the clutch award.
Right. Yeah. I don't get it. That's why we already had that conversation of it's amazing how they gave it to Jalen Brunson. Not knocking him because I'm a big JB fan, but I don't see how he got that award.
So do you know the common denominator between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers?
I do. Paul George.
Paul George. You want to explain it to our viewers?
Well, Paul George was traded from Oklahoma to the Clippers for SGA.
And a buttload of picks.
Yep. Now, he was also playing in Indiana when they traded for he was also Tyrese went to Indiana.
He was in Sacramento.
Got it.
Yeah. So Indiana Pacers traded Paul George to Oklahoma City for Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis.
Mm-hmm.
And then Indiana traded Sabonis to Sacramento for Tyrese Halliburton.
It's crazy. And both of these guys are having some stellar careers as far as Halliburton and SGA. SGA, I still don't see what is the big hoopla about him. I mean, to me, he's a good player, but he doesn't give me superstar vibes. So I mean, he's just a great player.
So we talked about this at the Luka trade, and I said after I watched him play for the Lakers that he was highlight reel. He was flash and dash. And Dirk didn't get a lot of props because he wasn't flashy. You start sticking out his tongue until late in his career. But he got you 25, and you're kind of like, well, he didn't dominate or do anything special. And you look at the scoreboard, he took 12 shots and shot 10 free throws, and you kind of like, wow, I didn't realize. And so SGA is kind of like that. He's got a little bit of Ja Morant in him, but he's not flashy. He's not highlight reel type player. He's just consistent. And that little jab step and then pull up and circle back, kind of like Chris Paul used to do, and hit that little 10-foot, 12-foot shot or the little floater. So if you put Chris Paul and Ja Morant together, that's what SGA is.
I think of him more so of a Rudy Gay, in my opinion, when Rudy Gay was really, really good. That's who SJ reminds me of because he's consistent.
The
Rudy
the
Gay was
Memphis Grizzlies version of Rudy Gay.
Indiana Rudy Gay when he was with
Okay.
Indiana. Because remember, Paul George and Rudy Gay was playing at the same time until Paul
Yeah.
got hurt.
Well,
And Rudy Gay,
Rudy Gay was also at Memphis, and he was pretty good there.
yeah, he was. I think he was more dominant when he was in Indiana. Yeah, I think he hurt himself in Indiana and then moved on over to the Memphis Grizzlies. Who do you got winning though out of this series now that Indiana's taking game one? You still pulling for OKC to win, take it to 6 games and win it all?
Whew. What's the old NBA saying? The series don't start until the road team wins.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the road team won last night, and I'm like, at this point, them taking game one, even if it's a miracle, like it's really hard to bet against Carlisle.
It is.
I'm going to root for the Thunder, but if I had to put money on the table with Vegas, I like betting against Carlisle, like betting against Popovich
Yeah.
or Riley.
I think you're absolutely correct, man. Because I'm my money is on Indiana. Because especially it wasn't at first because I didn't know what Indiana was going to bring, but they've been playing very hard for the last couple of playoff series. They really been playing to what Rick Carlisle's has them playing to be. Their capabilities of beating any team is very prominent in regards to what they're doing to the number one team in the league in the Oklahoma City
Yeah,
Thunder.
the announcers made a comment last night, which is very true, is Carlisle's teams are notorious. They keep their character on offense and defense, no matter how the game's going. That's a reflection on the coach. And you saw that last night. They're playing some pretty hard-nosed defense. Oklahoma City's not just getting an easy shot. You didn't see a lot of buckets in the paint. You didn't see many layups. It's like, and Oklahoma City's pretty good defensively. So it may go 7. It's going to be a tight series, but yeah, and let's face it, Oklahoma City's got talent. They may have more talent than Indiana, but if it comes down to coaching, which last night it did, then I'm not going to bet against Carlisle.
Gotcha. Absolutely. Our last subject of the day, we're going to talk about player legacy. And we mentioned this team a little bit earlier. Chicago Bulls. They've had some amazing players throughout this franchise history. Notably, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, D Rose. In your estimation, Bob, and there's some I probably haven't mentioned that was back in the 80s and um, early 80s to be in fact that I don't know that I couldn't think off the top of my head, but give us some ideas of some of your favorite legacy players when it comes to the Chicago Bulls.
I mean, if you go old school, I'm leaving it this one for Wild Dog in case you want to talk about Artist Gilmore. That was a
Artist
little
Gilmore.
before my time.
And then that, speaking of Artist Gilmore, if you guys seen the Kiki Vanderwick episode, he said he dunked on Artist Gilmore and he tried to do it again and ended up in the third row, waking up and trying to what happened. That was funny. You guys gotta
Yeah.
go check it out.
Subscribe, Switch for Real, subscribe, go back, Kiki Vanderway. So I'll mention 3 players because of the same era.
Mm-hmm.
Horace Grant and Rodman and Steve Kerr, I think, were underrated on those 3-peat teams.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, one of the Berry brothers, I think, played on one of those teams. So the other guard was supposed to be able to hit the 3-pointer.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve, when you go into the United Airlines, I think that's what's still called arena where they play. They've got foot prints of different players, and then they got hand prints of different players.
Mm.
And I literally, my hand, you can't really tell. My hand fit, and it was just a little bigger than Steve Kerr's hand.
Oh wow.
You could put both of my hands together, and I didn't even touch this part of Shaquille O'Neal's hand.
So his
So
hand looked like this.
yeah, so Steve Kerr, yeah, exactly. You put your two ends together, still probably wouldn't be as big as Shaq's.
Dang.
So
Can't wait to meet him in person.
Steve Kerr didn't have really big hands, but he was a really, I wouldn't call him a sharpshooter, but he was very efficient. And if you left him open, he was going to drain it. Uh, Horace Grant on the first three-peat, he went to Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
He could score, he could rebound, he could defend. We all know what Rodman can do. And the only reason I didn't choose Jordan is we talked about Jordan. So I'm gonna choose the other obvious choice. And his son is playing and looking pretty good for the Memphis Grizzlies.
Scottie Pippen.
Scottie Pippen. Career stats: 16.1 points a game, 6.4 rebounds a game, 5.2 assists a game. Those
Not
those
bad.
numbers in themselves don't really stick out, but the ones that are coming up will. He played 17 seasons. He only made $190 million.
It's way
And
more than I
people
could.
say, well, 190 million, that's a lot. Well, yeah, that is a lot for the average Joe like you and me. We'd love that. But 190 million in a couple of years, that'd be one season. I mean, I think if Stephen Curry signed the first contract that was 200 million, and these max extensions now are like 350 million for 4 years or 5 years. It's like 70 million a year.
That's freaking ridiculous. Just to throw a ball in the hoop.
So in 17 seasons, 10 times he was all defensive team.
And much deserved.
8 of those 10 years, he was the first team all defensive team.
Much deserved.
And I know you like defense.
Yes, sir.
9 times he had voting shares for defensive player of the year.
Jeez.
Twice he finished second for defensive player of the year. 7-time All-Star. 7 times All NBA. 3 of those were on the first team. 6 times he had voting shares for MVP.
What?
You really don't think of Scottie Pippen an MVP, but 6 times he had voting shares for MVP. This next one will stick out. 94-95. He led the league in total number of steals for a season in 232. 2.9 steals per game.
Scottie Pippen.
That's about 6 points a game right there. 2.9, and we all know he could dunk.
Yeah. But it stood about like 6'7", didn't he?
6'7" in that area. Which leads to my next one. These are kind of some unknown facts I dug up. He was in the 1990 slam dunk contest.
Wow. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Okay, this other one. On draft night in 1987.
Arkansas.
The Seattle Supersonics traded for Olden Polynice and a second round pick in 88 and a first round pick swap.
So Seattle got Olden Polynice. I thought he went to Sacramento.
I can go back and double check, but that's what they traded to get the 5th pick in the 87 draft, which they took Pippen.
Yeah, and they needed Pippen at the time.
Polynice and a second rounder.
That's crazy.
And they swapped picks. They moved from 22nd up to 18. The first round pick swap turned into BJ Armstrong.
And I was about to mention him as an unsung Chicago Bull player because he hit some clutch shots during those finals.
Yeah, I don't remember who won the 1990 slam dunk contest, but I I thought that was kind of a little nugget there about Scottie Pippen, but when you look at his career numbers, like what sticks out is defense. Yeah, he was the perfect Batman for perfect Robin to Batman.
Sorry about that. My dog is barking. She's going crazy. So here are a couple of things I wanted to mention too. There's been in Chicago's Bulls history some great point guards and just guards in general. Number one, Derrick Rose was like a phenomenal guard. We talked about him earlier. Number two, you got Zach LaVine, who's actually playing now for Chicago. And then you can't forget, remember Kirk Heinrich? He was a
Yep.
baller. Yeah. And then
Kansas,
also,
University of Kansas.
facts. Ben Gordon. Remember Ben Gordon when he played for the Chicago Bulls?
Yeah.
And then I don't know if I can't remember if he was a guard or a small forward, but Lou Aldine carried him for a while as well in regards to the Chicago Bulls. So they've always had some great guard play. And right now, and I was kind of talking to someone about what if we can get this kid, Lonzo Ball, to play for the Mavericks as our guard. I think he will be a great addition for the team if we can get him. What are your thoughts as far as him coming to Dallas?
Well, the Maverick Hospital injury report board, he would fit in perfectly. I mean, we got enough flat tires. We might as well be called the Dallas Maverick discount tires.
Nah, I think he's good though.
But when you mentioned Derrick Rose, that Chicago team had Yannick Noah,
Joakim
Noah, Jimmy Butler.
Yep, Jimmy Buckets.
And
Carlos Boozer.
Had Carlos Boozer. And I don't remember, but they were always playing in the Eastern Conference Finals till Derrick Rose blew out his knee.
Yeah, that was a tragic. I remember watching that game. And wasn't it a playoff game that he hurt himself?
Initially, yeah.
That's crazy. But the Bulls, man, that franchise to be so iconic with one of the most iconic players to play for them ever in Michael Jordan. It says a lot about the ownership at the time when they really wanted to make sure that team succeeded and they put all the pieces in the right place, especially when they went and grabbed Tony Kukoc out of Europe to play with Michael Jordan. That was an amazing feat. And then also adding Dennis Rodman to play with him because they needed the defensive rebounds and the defense. They did a lot to make that team what it was as far as a franchise go. Any final thoughts on the Chicago Bulls and their legacy players?
So the earlier Chicago Bulls, most people didn't follow them before Jordan, and I don't, but I remember they traded, I think it was Anthony Mason, but they traded to New York to get Bill Cartwright.
Oh, I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah,
And
Mason was a pretty good power forward.
He was. He was. Chicago needed a center and they needed a power forward, but they had got two great power forwards, him and Charles Oakley at the same time.
Oakley was there, yeah. And Stacey King played for Chicago Bulls. He was one of the first 7-footers to. So there's one other name that I was going to pull up here. I'll give you a hint. He was the longest running coach for the Utah Jazz.
Jerry Sloan.
Played for Chicago.
Yep, I remember.
And I believe Phil Jackson played for them as well.
Did he? I think he did.
He played for New York.
I knew that.
And Lou Alding was with Joakim Noah.
Yep.
And if you want to go really old school, this shout out for Wild Dog, Chet Walker.
Chet Walker. Shout out to you, Wild Dog, man. Hope you watch this episode
And
and
another
enjoy it.
shout out for Wild Dog Bob Love.
Bob Love. Oh, yeah, I've heard of Bob Love. Dang.
And
I
so
feel
before we mentioned with one guy that I mentioned earlier, and there weren't many players outside the United States. And this guy didn't have a lot of hype with him, but you got to mention Tony Kukoc.
yeah, I did. Remember?
Yeah,
Tony Cook was one of the players that got out of Europe that played with Jordan to help them win the championship.
yeah, he was a rookie on the second three-peat
Wow.
in
That's crazy.
'96.
And he played damn good. Even though we call him a rookie because he's rookie to the NBA, the kid was not a rookie at all. He played.
Yeah, he played in Europe like
Yeah,
several years.
absolutely. Kind of like Doncic, you know what I mean, when he came here.
I don't think he started as young in age, but yeah.
Thanks, man. Chicago Bulls, man. What a legacy as far as that franchise go. Is there anything else you want to add to it?
That pretty much covers it. So, Dwayne Wade went home and played for him for a half a season. I know, but he wanted the bag, and so he went to Chicago to get the bag, and I think they cut him, and then he went back to Miami.
Yeah. Anyway. Well, guys, it's been a great episode. We wanted to cover a lot of the finals because now we're in the midst of the finals with OKC facing off against the Pacers. And again, I'm pulling for the Pacers just because of Rick Carlisle. But hey, we'll see who wins. I think Indiana has a great chance, but the odds say that it will be OKC. So as we close out, Bob, tell the people where they can find you on these social media streets, man, giving your social media handles.
Well, before the show, we were talking about this. At Boogie Bob on YouTube, I hit 50 subscribers.
Yeah, let's
today.
push that up, man, to at least 100 before the weekend's up, guys. Come on, let's get it.
Yeah. So you'll always find me right there, right above Swish for real.
For real. And I'm wearing a North Dallas t-shirt because my son used to play football for them, North Dallas High School. And we got a good story on them as well as far as the basketball team goes. So check them out.
And for those listening and watching, stay tuned. Next week, we're going to have Paul Miranda back as our guest.
Thanks. It'll be June 13th. That'll be a Friday, June 13th, Friday the 13th. That's crazy. That's a good time to have him on. And you can catch me on X, Lampkin, Mikhail Lampkin, and /poet-director, because again, we'll be talking about me directing films. I'm also on YouTube as well, the same Lampkin Mikhail /poet-director. And that's about it for me. I don't have a lot of social media. I think TikTok, we're just basically trying to probably get on there, but I'm not quite sure yet. But it's been an amazing show, guys. Boogie Bob, I give you your weekend back, guys. You guys have a great one. Switch for where we are out.
That's it, bro.
All right, busy.